Hello, YouTube Sidekick here with another F-4 weapons tutorial. This time we're going to be looking at optically guided bombs, specifically the AGM62 Walleye, although anything that we talk about here would be true of the hobo bomb as well. Now, I know this topic has been covered by a number of other channels, but I did want to give you my own take on it. Now, I'm going to try and follow the pattern I've been using lately, which seems to have been well received, which is just showing you how to get the job done, and then going back and kind of spending a little time talking about the finer points of how to actually use the weapons effectively, and why they were the way they were, and how they were expected to be used. And then to demonstrate that point, I actually want to go back and revisit an old mission that I made that showed exactly the problem the Walleye was meant to solve, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And I'm going to have some help for that portion of the mission because I have tracks from a number of guys from my Discord channel who took up the challenge. But let's talk about that in a minute. For now, let's just go ahead and get walleyed, okay? Okay, here I am in an F-4E on my range mission with the sim paused, basically over the airport on the way out to the range. So let's just go over the switchology here. Okay, we're down on the weapons panel on the lower left here. Going to get the pylon selected, switch to master arm, but we don't get arm lights yet. We have to select the delivery mode to direct, and we have to have the weapon selector mode to TV. After that, we need to reach down there on the floor and turn the screen to TV, and we're ready to go. So as you can see, there really isn't that much to it, and once you've configured your screen, your radar screen, your DSCG screen, shows this wide sort of crosshair pattern of parallel lines vertically and horizontally with a square in the middle. To acquire the target, you have to get the target inside that square. Then you have to press and hold the trigger, and while you're holding the trigger, which means you're tracking the target, you then press the pickle button and wait until the bomb drops. Now, it is important not to press the pickle button unless you are convinced you have a good solution. This last bit can be important because remember the Walleye is not a missile. And it has somewhat limited guidance. If you drop it low and slow, it won't stay up long enough to hit the target. And also, I have found that if you drop it a little too high and a little too fast, it can also overshoot the target because it just isn't able to dive steeply enough. Now, none of that's very difficult. I mean, the launch window is pretty wide, but actually using the Walleye in a relevant fashion and staying within the launch parameters can be a bit more of a challenge than you might think. And by relevant, when I say a relevant fashion, is that you have to be able to hit a point target at a reasonably long standoff distance, because that's what the Walleye was meant to do. And since you have to aim the sensor with the aircraft, and since the capture window is frankly pretty small, and since the sensor is not actually aligned with the aircraft axis, this can rapidly become a game of, let's call it PIEIO, where you just oscillate around the target and never actually get it where you want it and acquire it, all the time flying closer to it and down to a lower altitude. So I'm going to show you a way that I worked out that at least helped me solve that problem on the range. And then we're going to go try this for real and find out just why the Walleye was never really all that popular with the pilots in doing the job for which it was intended. But so we've been flying around on the range, and I'm coming up to doing my first run here. So I'm going to pick a fairly easy target to begin with, but I want to make sure that when I'm engaging it from significant altitude and from significant standoff. If I'm not doing that, there's no reason I should be using a Walleye. So, like I said, we'll start with something easy, the big hanger. It's easy to see, and it's easy to line up on. So here's the method that I found that works for me. Basically, I'm not doing anything differently than I would for any other roll-in. I rolled over till the lift vector was pointed at the target, and now I'm pulling up. Now I'm watching the local vertical, that is the outside arrow, and I'm trying to aim it at the target. And when the pipper's below the target and the local vertical's aimed at it, if I look down at the TV screen, aha, the target is moving down the screen, and I can lock it, and I can pickle, and we are done. And that was actually relatively painless. And the trick is to watch that local vertical arrow That's the middle arrow on the outside ring. And get that pointed at the target. Keep it pointed at the target as you roll out. If it's pointed at the target, the pipper is going to follow up over the target, and that means that the target is going to be inside your tracking window. And that is really the simplest way to get what you're looking for in your tracking window. At least it was the simplest way for me to do it. You can see we hit the target. Just waiting here for target impact tracking script to tell us how we did. And hopefully, particularly I just want to see what our standoff was like. Okay, there it is. We dropped at 6,000 feet and had almost 7 kilometers. So what, 3.5 nautical miles of standoff, which is not bad. So that was a pretty good standard. And this time I'm going to back up even further. But I'm going to be going after a much more challenging target. We're going to go bunker busting. I'm going to target one of the bunkers that's in the 3 bombing rings to the right. Now, the problem is that the bunkers are much harder to see with the naked eye. So doing the visual lineup is not going to be as simple as it was on the hangar, and that's going to make it harder to adjust at the last minute to try and get on. So again, same thing. We're rolling in the same way we did. We're gradually rolling out, trying to keep that arrow pointed to where I think the target is. But now the problem is going to be, did I get that right? And you see a little bit of roll drifts the sight left and right because it's not aligned with the aircraft axis. We're too far to the right, trying to get it back to the left. Then it goes by, trying to get back to the right. You see what I mean about the pilot-induced oscillations. And we didn't actually get the target that time. Okay, so we're going to need to go and try that again. So you can see that time, essentially what happened was, despite my best efforts to the contrary, I was not lined up on the target visually with the pipper, and so by the time I got on the television screen, it was off just enough not to be able to acquire it, but just a little enough that it was very hard to make appropriate corrections. So here we go again. I'm going to try and do this the way I planned to, rolling in, lift vector to target, start watching that local vertical or true vertical, get it pointed at where I think the targets are. The sun gets to be a little bit of a problem there. And once I think it's pointed at the targets, it looks pretty good. Just let it drift up. Now I'm watching the television screen. Yes, we're better aligned this time. There's the target coming up, and we need to grab it and pickle, and the bomb goes. So, as you can see, it's no joke dropping walleyes. It's pretty easy to get prepared to drop them, but actually getting the pipper on target at any kind of decent range is not a simple thing at all. It's not for me. It takes a bit of practice. It does get easier with practice, but you really do need to practice on a place like the range where things are very controlled. When we go out and try to bomb the bridge, you're going to see what I mean. So again, we did get the bunker. You can see the BDA there. I'm just waiting for the target impact tracking strip to come up so I can see what our standoff was like on that run. It was not as far away as I would have liked. It took a little bit longer to get lined up than it probably should have, but at least we did manage to get lined up. Okay, there it is. 5,300 feet, 5.8 kilometers. Not great, but still pretty decent standoff. Okay, that's going to do it for range work. I think we've kind of exhausted the possibilities here. And I think we have a reasonable method for doing this, although even on the range, not all that easy to master. Frankly, it takes a bit of practice, and I haven't had a chance to practice as much as I would have liked to. So let's go take a look and see if this method will work for what I'm going to call is a real scenario. And by that I mean I decided to resurrect a mission that I made called the Sabre Bridge mission. In that mission you had to go out in your F-86, find a bridge that was deep in a mountain valley and that was well protected by flak, and then you had to take it out with 750-pound bombs. Now if you tried that mission, you know it was pretty hair-raising. Being accurate enough to hit that bridge meant you had to release pretty low, and that meant you could not entirely or at all avoid the flak. More often than not, it just wasn't possible to hit the bridge. It was a challenging enough target to hit at the best of times without being distracted by all of the stuff flying by your face. Well, this is exactly the challenge that the Air Force and the Navy faced in Korea. They spent a lot of time, especially by the latter stages of the war, trying to hit bridges in rough terrain. And as the war went on, the density of flak became more and more of a nightmare, and the problem just rapidly became one of diminishing returns. The effort that it took to hit a target was just out of all proportion to the effect of actually hitting it. What was wanted was the ability to drop a bomb from outside the flak danger zone and then guide it precisely, or have it guide itself precisely, to the very small point target. And that's what the Walleye was intended to do. Now, for the early 1960s, the Walleye was an impressive piece of technology. In fact, it was almost magic at the time. Now, because in the modern era of digital signal processing and now artificial intelligence, we don't think it's that big a deal for a computer to be able to find an object in a video scene and maybe even recognize what the object is. Well, back in the days of analog video processing, this was not easy at all. The object had to be effectively pulled out of the background using processing circuitry, not digital logic. And then, similarly, its position in the field of view had to be compared in analog fashion in real time to where it was supposed to be, i.e. in the middle. And then that comparison voltage had to be converted to guidance signals to fly the bomb into the target. The fact that it worked at all was a testament to the really advanced nature of the United States avionics and electronics industry at the time. Frankly, no one else came close to this kind of technology for really a decade or more, and only then they got there by effectively stealing the U.S. technology because it was obsolete at that point. But for all of that, the Walleye was still not a very easy weapon to use. And even though it was fire and forget, which made it better than the bullpup, which came before it, which actually had to be flown onto the target by the pilot, still, it had an incredibly small field of view for the seeker. And the fact that that couldn't be skewed independently meant that the available standoff distance could rapidly disappear as the pilot hunted for the target. Worse, while he was doing that, he was pretty much fully padlocked and head down, and not seeing the threat he was flying into. At any rate, I'm going to stop talking about it and show you what I mean. So actually, we've been doing that for the last little while. You've been watching footage of guest pilot Russhin taking off at the start of the Phantom Bridge mission. He's on his way out to find the bridge. I'll just show you quickly the briefing panels that he looked at the beginning of the mission, showing you the route to the bridge. And also look at the suspected flak locations. As you can see, there's a lot of them. So he's been flying on his way out to the bridge right now, and he's actually approaching the bridge location, although we did have a little small mix-up in his navigation. He should have had a better Wizzo flying for him. You can see here he's actually flying over the bridge location without actually knowing that he's doing it. And that's obvious because of his presence has obviously alerted the flak gunners, and they're preparing their barrage down there. At any rate, after a couple of minutes, Russian figured out that he'd gone too far in that direction, and he turned himself around. And now you can see him coming back towards the bridge. You can see the bridge down there. And here he is winding himself up to get a good look at the bridge. Nice long run in. And he's going to start rolling in right now. And there you can see him rolling in way back over the lake, up nice and high. And he's just got to get his pipper down towards the target now, watching that local vertical again. Remember to try and be able to see the bridge. The bridge is tough to see. That's what makes this mission tough. It's hard to pick out the target. And then you got to make sure you get the pipper up to it. Get that local vertical on it before you take your eyes down. There you go. Oh, we're going a little by it. Come back, and got it. And there go the bombs. Or bomb, I should say. And there goes the bomb. Flying towards the bridge. And that's what it looked like from the cockpit. So as you can see, that's a pretty successful strike. We took out the bridge, never got close to the flak. And that's basically the walleye swimming in its native environment as far as I'm concerned. So if you want to give the Phantom Bridge mission a try so you can see what using a walleye was actually supposed to be all about, drop by my Discord server. The file's available there. Got a number of people who've been trying it. Kind of got a little contest going to see who can hit it from farthest away. Drop by and see how you do. I hope you enjoyed that video. There'll be more on the way about other weapons delivery modes in the F-4E, and for now, this is going to be Sidekick. Signing off.